Now we shall, as they say in the React documentation, move state up, or lift state up, they call it. Take state from the component it's in, put it up the chain so that we can use it more places. So we have a room list that is in the room list component. And we'd like that to be in main so that we can do some other things. One problem that we have that we're trying to fix is that we no longer get descriptions of these rooms, right? We don't get descriptions. We just get the names because we're passing around these objects that have names but no descriptions. So we have this.state.rooms in room list. So in main, how about we just have this.state.rooms in there. Start that as an empty object. What else we got? So when the component mounts, we start syncing state with that. So sure, let's do that. Let's sync state in that manner. Now, of course, we could leave it in here if you want for right now. So we'll need base to be imported, right? It's not imported here yet. So import base from base.js. So we're going to do base sync state. We sync it with the endpoint rooms. We sync it with this.state.rooms. And, well, I mean, that ought to do much of what we're wanting. So then we want to change load room. Where's load room? Yeah. So what we could do here is load room, not add room, but load room, the thing that actually changes which room we're currently in. Change it to, instead of taking the room, just take the room name. And then what it does is instead of just setting state, we get this.state.rooms, right? That's the list of all rooms. And the keys are the room names. So we could get the new room like this, right? Couldn't we? Do it like that. Then we should be able to get the description. So where is load room being called? Just twice. Up here. So instead of passing in an object with the name, we just pass in the name. And here, same deal. Just pass in the name instead of an object with that name. And that should just about do it. Explode! Cannot read property name if undefined. Well, shucks. Here I thought this was going to work. What's the problem? Anybody know the problem? Anybody get this far? Nobody even tried this? We're 5 seconds into class. Yeah. So, on component did mount, we call this.load room, right? Yeah. So sync state happens asynchronously. It happens in the background. So the next line is going to run immediately. It's not going to wait to hear it from Firebase first. So that room won't be there yet. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. It hasn't started syncing with Firebase yet. So what could we do? It turns out sync state does not return a promise, so you can't just say .then and do it that way. That is a last resort. So here's good old rebase. Let's search for sync state. Here we go, sync state. Has a bunch of options. And one of these options is called then. So sync state takes this options object as its second argument, right? We have context and state. We used as array once. It also has an option called then. to which you can pass a function. The callback function that will be invoked when the initial listener is established with Firebase. So that will wait until it has started syncing before it calls whatever you put there. So we could put an arrow function here that calls this.loadRoom. Then that room's getting really ridiculous. That line's getting really ridiculously long, so I can say const room name equals this.props.match.params. There you go. Get it? Yeah. Can you do what? I'll just check whether it's. This is better. This is a better solution. If it works. Yay, it does. Change rooms, refresh the page. And yeah, it just waits. So you could like show a spinner or something there instead of showing it like with just a bunch of blanks in there. So if you notice in the documentation, it says typically used with sync state to change this.state.loading to false. So what you could do is set this.state.loading to true, and then when this finishes, set it to false. So when it's loading, you could just show some sort of spinner. And then when it's finished loading, show your actual stuff. So you could do something like that too. But at this point, we've at least protected it from doing that thing. All right. Questions so far? We can still click the links in the sidebar and switch rooms. And now we have descriptions up here, right?
So when you refresh, it will go back to that same room.
Ooh, no. So this is I think this is a bug we have in here that we did not have in the morning class, actually. But that's a separate issue. So what do we do? Lift rooms state up to main and load room descriptions. Yeah, so somehow we've ended up with a bug that the morning class did not have around going back to the correct room. So there must be something we're doing wrong in app.js. Let's look at this real quick. So if we match this path and we're signed in, then it goes to main. If it doesn't match, though, it's okay, but we're not there. So how am I ending up back on general? So that's if it doesn't match this route at all. But this matches this route, room/room name. But I must have done something slightly differently here. Yeah, it's not being used here. It doesn't need to be. So you could just put empty parens there if you want. What's different about this from the morning class? Once again, up here we're not using the nav props either, so whatever. Don't have to have them there. Why is it redirecting? Where are we? Local storage here. I know. This is happening in component did mount. In the morning class, it was happening in component will mount. The local storage part, that's happening after we have already rendered the page once. So that was enough to hit signed in false. Which is enough to screw that up. So the local storage part should not happen in component did mount. We maybe want a constructor here. So let's do it that way. Constructor, because we're trying to avoid using component will mount because they don't recommend it anymore. So in the constructor, we can say get this user out. So user equals json.parse local storage get item user, or empty element, empty object, I mean. You guys familiar with using or like this on an assignment? And then we can say this.state, this is the initial state, right? Equals user. Don't forget, we have to call super, right? So no longer do we do this in component did mount. We'll do it in the constructor. Now let's go to the Fortnite room. Let's refresh the page. And we stay in the Fortnite room. Did you get the problem? With component did mount, it wasn't putting the user in local in the state until after it had already run the render thing once. So it had already hit this and said this.signed in. Why, no, I'm not. Let's redirect to sign in. And then that room name's gone. Get it? The symptom we're fixing is that if we went to a room and then refreshed the page, it redirected us back to general every time. You might have copied it from the master branch where we did it with component will mount instead of component did mount. Yep. So we didn't have this problem in the morning class. And then I probably broke it today in class. I wonder if they've noticed.
Where is that code?
Where's what code?
Changing it from, I mean, you have it as component did mount in the master branch.
Yeah, because we changed it to that this morning. So I probably, like I said, I probably broke this morning. Yeah. But I hadn't yet diagnosed the issue, so. Okay. Load user from local storage in constructor instead of component did mount. Does the problem make sense? I mean, does the fix make sense?